Why do politicians attack judges in courts? I think that's worth asking because those politicians have something to gain from that. I pulled up this study, which goes over that. It notes that in recent decades, especially with the rise of populism, elected governments have increasingly sought to curtail the power and independence of the judiciary through various strategies. Beyond legal and institutional attempts to weaken the judiciary, verbal attacks against judges and courts have become more common. Numerous studies show that such government attacks violate the rule of law, trigger institutional crises, undermine judicial independence, and influence judicial behavior. A common pattern emerges when examining instances of verbal attacks against the judiciary. Politicians frequently launch these attacks immediately after they become embroiled in corruption scandals. To understand how corruption influences politicians' decisions to attack the judiciary, it is essential to examine the potential benefits that they might gain from such attacks. First, by blaming the judiciary and framing corruption allegations as politically motivated, the politician may seek to diminish the perceived significance of political corruption in the eyes of the public. Research suggests that public awareness of corruption alone is not sufficient for voters to punish the government at the ballot box. How blame is assigned plays a crucial role. Because politicians seek re-election, they may manipulate narratives about responsibility, shifting blame onto others. During a crisis, incumbent governments often blame external actors to prevent the public from holding them accountable. A government facing corruption allegations may accuse the judiciary of bias, political motives, or even corruption. Such accusations may serve a dual purpose. Not only do they divert attention away from the government's wrongdoing, but they also undermine the legitimacy of the allegations altogether. They're trying to control the public's perception of the corruption charges. Second, attacking the judiciary weakens the public's trust in it. When public confidence in the judiciary is low, we're more likely to accept political interference. It also makes it easier for the government to ignore the court's rulings. Third, it can influence judges. If they anticipate backlash, they may adjust their decisions and offer compromise rulings that align with preferences of other political branches. Verbal attacks on judges can serve as an intimidation tactic. Finally, undermining the credibility of the judiciary in the eyes of the public may provide electoral advantages for the ruling party. Lower trust in political institutions correlates with higher support for populist parties. To dismantle checks and balances, populists often seek to discredit the so-called corrupt elite, positioning themselves as true representatives of the pure people. In doing so, they frame democratic institutions, including the judiciary, as self-serving and detached from the interests of ordinary citizens. Erosion of public trust in institutions further reinforces the perception that political elites no longer act in the public's best interest, fueling support for populist parties. By using anti-elitist rhetoric and attacking the judiciary, populist governments can undermine the credibility of the judiciary among the public, potentially increasing their vote share in upcoming elections. One more interesting finding, this dynamic is associated with levels of media independence. Political corruption significantly increases the likelihood of government attacks on the judiciary. However, this relationship is conditioned by media freedom. Why? Because corruption is more likely to be exposed in the first place in regimes with media freedom. So the politicians have more incentive to push back and discredit courts. So the next time that you hear a politician claim that judges and courts are partisan, just think about why they would do that and what do they have to gain from that.